This topic is the overlooked issues, microplastics. In my last video, I pointed out how the conflict thesis had sidelined Christians in biology-related fields. I also mentioned that I believe some of the really important environmental topics get sidelined for more politically charged ones. A lot of people might see the topic of microplastics and think, oh, it's just another health fad, like lead, asbestos. It's important, but it'll be resolved quickly. Unfortunately, it's not that simple. Microplastics aren't mere building materials, or plastics are used in everything, and the microplastic waste is collecting in the water, the air, and the soil, and even in our own bodies. They've become so ubiquitous that we can even see plastic in falling snow in the Arctic. But what are they? Microplastics are just tiny plastic particles anywhere between 1 millimeter, no, 5 millimeters and a nanometer, while nanoplastics, on the other hand, are anything smaller than a micrometer. Well, what's a micrometer? It's 1,000 nanometers. So there's a bit of overlap there, but both come from the disintegration of plastic products in the environment. But, I mean, they're plastics. It just sits there, right? It's not going to do anything. Right, not going to do anything except cause issues with cancer, DNA damage, harmful epigenetic changes, and hormone disruption. This includes lowering testosterone, which is interesting because there was a 2007 study about a population level decline in testosterone among men. And then, again in 2020, Chodek et al. Writes in the conclusion, the results of this large real-world data analysis corroborate previous scattered reports that mean testosterone for men in developed countries is decreasing, which is unlikely to be explained by increasing rates of obesity. The biological mechanisms of this disquieting secular trend should be further examined. Now, I'm not going to jump to any conclusions, but we do know microplastics have continued to accumulate in the environment and that they cause hormone disruption. Do I think microplastics could be so ubiquitous that they've become a major factor in this trend? Yeah, I definitely think it's possible. One 2020 study even found 1 to 4,000 tons of plastic deposition into U.S. conservation areas every year. Now those are conservation areas. So how much do we find elsewhere? Besides their own properties, microplastics tend to smuggle other toxic chemicals into our bodies, including those forever chemicals like PFAs, our old friends PFAs. So there's another question or controversy, I should say. The question is whether microplastics biomagnify or increase up trophic levels. So we know they accumulate in the environment, but do they biomagnify? Biomagnification is the tendency to increase in density as you rise up trophic levels. For a simple analogy, shrimp eat microplastics, maybe thinking it's food. Then a smaller fish eats a bunch of shrimp, and a larger fish eats a bunch of smaller fish. Each time, the microplastics of one fish might increase the given amount of microplastics consumed in the other fish. So by the time it reaches the apex predator, which might be you, have a lot more microplastics inside it. Now, we know this happens with mercury, but there was a 2020 meta-analysis which argued that there wasn't any good evidence for biomagnification. Good. Good thing. We don't want that. But there was a 2024 study that said just the opposite. For the record, I'm not one of those people that's just looking to push the most terrifying and startling ideas on everyone just so everyone acts out of fear. No, no, I actually hope it is not the case that microplastics do not biomagnify. But, they do quite enough as it is. We also know that treated wastewater that retains microplastics will have the same microbial community makeup after treatment. And that we have a Texas-sized blotch of plastic in the Pacific Ocean called the Great Pacific Ocean Garbage Patch. What might be surprising is that while you see many images of floating waste, much of the patch is filled with a thick microplastic soup that's collected, not just merely floating surface garbage. But there is a lot of that too. But this isn't just a faraway problem. Sources of plastic that most influence you in particular are going to be your home or the workplace. Things like polystyrene in those foamy coffee cups can induce impairments in learning and memory by damaging the lymphatic system. We also know microplastics accumulate in local lakes and in even our water supply. Apart from plastic appliances, microwavable containers, even the dust carries microplastics, about 5,900 micrograms per gram of dust on average, but it could have up to 120,000. Microplastics have been shown to accumulate in your liver, your kidneys, and even your brain. And there's evidence that in the past 8 years, the amount of microplastic accumulation in our brains was increased by about 50%. That's some bad news. Globally, plastic production is slated to increase. So, you know, this isn't a problem that we have a grand consensus on reducing plastic production. This isn't one of those things that we're getting a handle on. This is one of those things that we need to realize we need to get a handle on. Anyway, like I said, the topic hasn't received a lot of attention. It's not polarized, uh, but that said, the level of toxicity of some plastics have caused them to be banned in certain areas. But there's things we can do. As bad as that may sound, we're not powerless. Stay tuned for the next video, where I go over what we can do and what solutions we have going for us. Anyway, if you like the content, please feel free to subscribe and like. And as usual, the citations will be at the bottom.